Why I bought this one, I'm not sure. I think because I have a motorcycle buying problem. But it was close by, it looked like it was in good shape, and at the time, for some reason, I wanted another project. So, a 1973 RT360, otherwise known as the RT3. It's a great model of motorcycle. They changed the design after this. And when I got it, the guy said it had electrical problems. He had a Power Wheels battery hooked up to it. I figured I can handle that. So it was pretty complete. It did not have a seat, but I have a couple of those. Took the motor apart one night for fun at the old warehouse and found out that a bearing race was completely blown up in it. And I thought it would be okay, so I put it back together, but then the more I thought about it, the more I figured, why not? Let's just do this the right way. So the motor's been an ongoing project for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years, but recently, in the past 6 months or a year, I took the frame apart. Original blinkers were on there, all the wiring, the hand controls, the little switches on the handlebars were in great shape. So all that small stuff that's really expensive was there, and that was part of the appeal for it. So I took all that apart, stripped it down, cleaned up the frame, got some thermal flow shocks for it. The other day I just painted the underside of the fender with some rust paint, so doing some small slow work on that. Here's a couple shots of the frame restoration. New tires, new tubes, you know, the important stuff when you have an engine that does not work at all. So basic stuff just to fill some time and keep me going. Ended up getting a couple of new extra cases, and there was another secondary issue with this engine. You can see the trashed bearing race there. The Torrington bearing on the clutch was messed up, and I ordered another one of those. There's the new one and the old one. Got that all situated, put it back together, and the engine wouldn't shift. So I took it apart again recently to figure out why exactly that was, and here is what I found. Okay, I've got the RT360 here. This is a crash course in shift drums. So originally when I got this engine, I took it apart for fun. The guy said it just needed electrical problems. Motor had some big problems. The bearing boss was blown up, so I ended up replacing a side case. So this is the third time I've had this motor apart here. Most recently, I found that it wouldn't shift. It wouldn't shift to save my life. So reluctantly, I took it apart, and you can see this shift drum, and where it goes into the case is a pretty precisely machined area. I'm not sure if these cracks here, which you can kind of make out, were there before or after, but definitely that shift drum I just showed you was the second replacement from eBay, because this one I tried to tap in with a hammer. Bad move, because the end of it's made out of glass. So this one's bad. Here's the latest one. So this one I think will do okay. It's ready to go. Need to put it into the engine and see how that works. Essentially, as long as it goes in smoothly, it should be all right. I'll give it a shot real quick and see what happens. I'll clear a little bit of room out over here. I don't know what that goes to. I guess one of these. So it fits pretty well, rotates nicely. Just need to get the pins in there, get the shift forks back in, and then I'm waiting on some sealer for this case. Permatex Moto Seal is what I use. Works fine. I've used Yamaha Bond before. It's good too. Then this can go back together. So with that having been figured out, it seems as though the engine was going to go back together and work just fine. I did see, as you'll see in upcoming moving pictures and photos, one of the two shift forks on the side that has the two shift forks was in the wrong spot. So that created some issues where it wouldn't shift correctly, but it didn't keep the shift drum from turning. So I'm thinking that was just a bad part from eBay. To get the things in and out, it's kind of a tight squeeze unless you pull the transmission out as a whole. So I would pull the E-clips or C-clips, circlips, whatever you want to call them, on the shift fork shafts to get things in and out. And you see here what I was doing. It was hard to get back in, but with a little bit of handiwork and miscellaneous tools in the case, I was able to get that clip back on, and that lets me get those shift forks out of there easily without taking the whole transmission, shift drum, shift forks out as an assembly. And I had to be pretty diligent a couple of times about keeping the shift fork pins and their races on the shift drum, but just taking some time and exercising patience, I was able to get it right, and everything was shifting, all the gears 1 through 5, including neutral. And after that point, it was a matter of putting the shift mechanism back together. Cases are still apart here, but I wanted to get the shift linkages and everything hooked up so that I could test if the shift drum was doing what it should. It can be hard sometimes because you have to have movement on either input or output shaft, really, but you have to have the gears of the transmission moving to get that shift drum to really do what it's designed to do. So slapped everything together, gave it a couple tests, got everything working correctly, and then it was time to move on. Okay, after a little bit of trouble, I think I've got it working right. I was having some problems shifting again. This fork and that fork seems like they were backwards. So if you're looking at what I did earlier, don't do that. Fork there, fork there. This one's a little bit wider, a little more narrow. But always, if you're in this deep to an engine, check your transmission before you put it all back together and seal it up. So this detent down here is our neutral detent that goes to the very bottom of the case. And when we shift, this is reverse from how it would normally be. That's first gear, back to neutral. These two shafts spin independently, and that would be second. Need to help it out a little bit. Third, somewhere in there is fourth, and then there's fifth. So I'm happy with that. I think that that's working right. Again, watch your shift forks. Don't take an engine apart, leave it apart for half a year, and then decide you're going to put it back together in a couple of hours. You'll forget where things go. There are parts diagrams out there. Those would be helpful. I'm stubborn and a little bit dumb, so that could have saved me some trouble. There's a circlip down here that you can't exactly see. See if I can get down there. That circlip goes on this lower shift fork rod. I've got to put that in. I've got to put the shift mechanism on, and then we'll be in good shape. Okay, so since the transmission, the shift mechanism is all mostly back in together, and I'm waiting on sealant, I thought I'd give you a quick tour of the other pieces. Mostly simple stuff, just laying around the bench. Got the cylinder in the head there, old shift drums, new points and condenser over here. That's ready to go on the piston. I used Cerakote, put a low friction coating on the skirt, and then a high heat something or other on the top. I figured, what the heck. Inside of the one case here, everything should be good to go. Shims back here on the transmission. Don't lose those, don't forget those. This crankshaft has a shim on this side of the case. The new bearings in the other case over here. And I'll clean up the case halves where they go together for the new sealant on there. Otherwise, pretty simple. Clutch basket. Got new clutch plates. I think they're from a Big Bear or something like that. And that's really all there is to an engine. So this will be going back in the frame, and it should be test drivable, test runnable at least, pretty quick after it's in there. Carburetor's back over there on the bench, and it probably needs a light rebuild, and then it's ready to go. And so there you have it. This is what you get when you take an engine apart, move 2 or 3 times, and then don't pay attention to what you're doing in the first place. But I think I finally got it figured out. The engine looks good. The cylinder head is red because I had high temperature red paint, and I think it looks kind of okay. It's not original, but If you've seen any of the other stuff I do, exactly original is not really my thing. So once I get the frame a little more put together and get the metalwork painted on it and looking in decent enough shape, I'll put the engine back in it. So this one's becoming a little more viable. And then off to the chopping block or selling block or auction block or any block but here with it because I need space.